In 2015, the historic Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, planted a 3-foot-tall juniper hedge maze right on its front lawn. It was built because tourists kept showing up wanting to recreate the chase from the climax of The Shining. But if those tourists were looking for historical accuracy, they were in the wrong place. The real Stanley Hotel never had a hedge maze on its grounds. Even Stephen King's original 1977 novel lacked a maze. The book's climax actually revolved around animated topiary animals. The hedge maze was the invention of director Stanley Kubrick for his 1980 film adaptation. To add to the irony, Kubrick didn't film his movie in Colorado. He shot it on a soundstage in England. The hotel modified its grounds to match a set piece from a movie filmed thousands of miles away. The Stanley has surrendered its identity to a piece of fiction. In doing so, it has buried its actual origin story, a history that happens to be the mirror opposite of the horror myth it inspired. In 1903, wealthy inventor Freeland Oscar Stanley arrived in Colorado with a terminal diagnosis of tuberculosis. Doctors gave him 3 months to live. But his wife Flora refused to accept that sentence. She had studied nutritional science under culinary legend Fanny Farmer, and she applied specific dietary treatments to nurse her husband back to health. Flora and FO were true partners. Together, they dismantled and rebuilt steam-powered automobiles in their Massachusetts factory, establishing themselves as technological pioneers. To celebrate his survival, the couple purchased a massive tract of land in Estes Park, a sprawling area previously controlled as a private hunting preserve by the Earl of Dunraven. Here they built a marvel of modern engineering. Opened in 1909, the Stanley Hotel featured all-electric kitchens, hydroelectric power, and a fleet of custom Stanley steamers to transport guests up the mountain roads. The building standing on that mountain was designed as a sanctuary of healing, technology, and marital devotion. In October 1974, a young writer named Stephen King checked into the Stanley just as the staff was shutting the building down for the winter season. They were the only guests. King spent the evening wandering the echoing corridors alone, soaking in isolation. At that moment, King was fighting his own demons. He was struggling with alcoholism, experiencing an explosive temper, and harboring deep anxieties about his role as a father. He took those psychological fears, the drinking, the anger, the dread of harming his own children, and projected them onto the empty hotel, birthing Jack Torrance. The isolation that once healed F.O. Stanley became, in King's mind, the catalyst that destroys Torrance's sanity. King's projection peaks with a husband, driven mad by the hotel, stalking its halls and attempting to murder his own wife and young son. A sanctuary built by a husband and wife who work together to defeat death was overwritten by a fiction where a husband brings death to his family. When King published The Shining in 1977, it became a bestseller. Almost immediately, the fiction began to eclipse the historical truth of the location. Stanley Kubrick's 1980 film adaptation catapulted the myth of the haunted hotel into global consciousness, despite heavily altering the story and infuriating King. King despised Kubrick's version so much that nearly 2 decades later he was driven to return to the actual Stanley Hotel to tell the story on his own terms. In 1997, he wrote and produced a television miniseries adaptation, shooting it directly on the hotel grounds. This physically bonded the building to his dark, fictional universe. Today, the Stanley leans into its reputation. Guests often overlook the history of technological innovation, preferring to wander the halls with flashlights, hunt for ghosts, and ask about the elevators. The hedge maze serves as a physical sign of the hotel's shift into a pop culture set piece. An inventor built a monument to celebrate the wife who saved his life. Yet it will forever be globally famous as a place where a husband tries to murder his family.